Carlsbad, People, Purpose, and Impact, an essential podcast for those who live, work, visit, and play in Carlsbad.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Brett Schanzenbach. I'm the president and CEO of the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce. I am your host today, and I'm pleased to have with me Lela Panagides. She is the president of the board for the Rapid Response Housing Solutions. Good morning, Lela.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be here.
Great to have you. Thanks for taking the time. So, Rapid Response Housing Solutions. Now, you made a point before we started. We wanted to make sure people know you guys are all volunteer run, and so you are the volunteer president, which is great.
Yep.
I was doing some digging and trying to do my homework a little bit, and I came across this quote on your guys' website. You guys are driven by the belief that the greatest source of energy is leadership done in the spirit of service.
Yes.
And I love that that quote. Share a little bit about what Rapid Response Housing Solutions is and give us a little background and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, all of our volunteers are motivated by service to others, to the community which they live in, and making sure that everyone in the community is uplifted, is treated with dignity and respect. And we all share the values of focusing on what can we do as a community coming together. And I'm going to use the word love. It's a strong word, but in love together to make sure that everyone is thriving and people have opportunities. And so Rapid Response Housing Solution, I'm going to start with our mission because that's where we focus our energy. And our mission really is to prevent homelessness by empowering people in the face of emergencies with rapid support.
Yes.
Our organization started actually in 1990, 32 years ago, by Carlsbad residents. And at that time, and I know you were living here at that time, Carlsbad was about 60,000 residents. It was half the size that it is now. And many agricultural farms were scattered throughout the city, stretching up El Camino Real. And a vast majority of people working in the fields were farm workers, working in agriculture. Our city plant, the Birds of Paradise farms we had here. And there was very few options for housing for these workers. And many of them slept in tents in the fields that they worked. And so if you drove up El Camino Real in the evening, you would see the campfires in the hills there. And one evening, Kathleen Dunn-Wellman, who was a Carlsbad resident and attorney, she was also a mom. She was driving with her fourth grade son, and they were looking through the window at these encampments. And he turned to his mom. He said, Mom, why do we live in a house and those workers don't? And that was such a profound question for her. And she was very impacted by her son's question. And then fast forward a bit, many nonprofits are formed in response to a tragedy.
Sure.
You think World Central Kitchen or Wounded Warriors. And our origin story, sadly, was in response to a horrific incident that happened in 1990 in Carlsbad, not far from where we're sitting today, actually. So on January 3rd, 1990, a 26-year-old farm worker by the name of Candido Salas was standing outside of the country store, and he was waiting for day work. We have a lot of day laborers here. And he was attacked. He was beaten. He was handcuffed to a fence. His arms and legs were bound with duct tape, and he was gagged. And he had a bag that was placed over his head with the words "No más aquí" written across it, which literally in Spanish means "no more here." Local law enforcement got involved. In fact, the FBI got involved with this investigation, and it was determined it was a hate crime. So this small, tight-knit Carlsbad community, which was just shocked by this, came together, and Kathleen Wellman really took the lead to bring all these concerned community members together. They reached out to St. Patrick's, a lot of the faith organizations here, and they came together to approach the city council and say, we need to do something. We need to respond with love as a community. And they came together in a coalition, and this was organizations and businesses and houses of worship and the Rotary Club. Catholic Charities got involved, local city council, and they did this really, really hard work of putting together a coalition Kathleen formed what was then called Caring Residents of Carlsbad. It was a 501(c), and they built the first homeless men's shelter in North County, San Diego. And when interviewed, because Kathleen was the Citizen of the Year for her leadership, she said, quote, "We have to help alleviate the suffering of the homeless. The federal and state government can help, but the buck stops here. This shelter is a step in the right direction." And that's really what the spirit of our mission continues to be. Homelessness has not gone away.
Right.
For every 10 people that exit homelessness, there's 13 that come in to the system. So it's a leaky boat.
Yeah.
And it seems intractable. It's so complex. But all of the organizations, all of the levels of government and these faith-based organizations that are coming together to address it, there is a solution. We know that there's a solution. The solution to homelessness is for people to have a home. And it sounds simple, but doing that, reaching that goal is extremely complex. So we just play one little part in that, in helping to reach that goal.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that backstory. So then how did you get connected to Rapid Response Housing Solutions?
So some people may know, we were listening to this, I ran for city council in 2020, and it was during the shutdown, the pandemic.
Right.
And so I wasn't able to really get out and canvass and talk to people. But one of the things that you do when you are running for office or really running for any leadership position is talk to the people that you're going to represent.
Right.
What are the top of mind issues? What are the key kind of keep me up at night kind of thoughts? And so I started talking to many community organizations, especially in the district that I was, but throughout Carlsbad. And I came across this group of people that support the La Posada de Guadalupe Men's Shelter, and was very inspired by the work that they did. And this story that has gone back to 1990. People of goodwill and heart-centered and love-centered people that give of their time, their treasure, their talent to try to solve solutions. And we know that the quality of our life is so determined by what happens on a local level, which is why local city council makes a big impact, because those policy decisions have the most immediate impact on our lives.
Right.
So I met with them and I was very inspired. And they asked me to come on the board in actually 2019, so going into 2020. We looked at the organization. They didn't have an online presence. There wasn't a lot of infrastructure built in terms of, it was really kind of a re-startup. My background is in business. I'm an entrepreneur. I focus on companies that are just starting out and growing. So I just brought all my skills and talents together and developed a website and created a database for all their donors, because they were some on Excel spreadsheets, and really just created that infrastructure. But my motivation really was to see this grow and to plug in more into the community and be part of this coalition, this wider coalition within San Diego County as well. And what part could we play? What was that part as a volunteer-based organization could we do to help alleviate the homelessness crisis?
Wow, that's wonderful. We're going to take a quick pause. We are talking with Lela Panagides from Rapid Response Housing Solutions. When we come back, we're going to talk about their initiatives and what they're doing. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. So Lela, the Rapid Response Housing Solutions started as Caring Residents of Carlsbad, as you mentioned, from Kathleen Dunn. And then it went into a transition, and it was called Friends of La Posada. And you mentioned La Posada, and now you recently went into a rebranding of Rapid Response Housing Solutions. So take us through that journey a little bit. Like, why did it get changed to Friends of La Posada, and what is your relationship to them? And then why rebrand again?
Right. I want to start off with just talking about our Carlsbad firefighters, because they have these 4 printed words on the side of their official vehicles. And the 4 words are prevent, respond, prepare, and recover. And we looked at the homelessness crisis and said, what could our group do to focus on alleviating this crisis? And we decided that prevention was the area that we were going to focus. If we could prevent people from being unstabilized in housing in the first place, that would be where we would focus our efforts. And so as we were thinking about what this small group, because we're just a small group, could do, we wanted to say that homelessness as a social problem can only be solved if we ask the question, what is the social change we seek? And so with that, it was articulated that we needed to do some research, and there are some really good researchers on our board. We reached out to the Chapin Hall Institute at the University of Chicago, who has done extensive research and policy research on what are those innovative solutions out there that could be used to help people avoid being homeless in the first place and then to exit homelessness. And so when we decided to really shift our focus to prevention, it opened up much more opportunity to look at this kind of ecosystem and the systematic, all of the moving pieces, both the micro and macro impacts. And where we landed really was on using direct cash assistance as a way to stabilize people in housing, because it's a much greater lift to move someone who's already been unsheltered into shelter than to keep them stabilized in the first place. And so we went to Catholic Charities, actually. We talked to their CEO, Vino Pajamor, and there was a lot of confusion because Catholic Charities manages and runs the shelter. They actually operate the shelter.
When you say the shelter, you mean?
The La Posada de Guadalupe Men's Shelter.
Right.
So there was a lot of confusion because our name was Friends of La Posada. So people were coming to us thinking we were the service provider, that we were the ones. I was actually getting calls from people who wanted shelter and said, is your shelter open? What are the criteria? I mean, so we're not service providers. We're not social workers. We're not case managers. And so there was a lot of brand confusion because Catholic Charities runs that shelter.
Right.
So really with the blessing of Catholic Charities and Vino Pajamor and the Catholic Charities team, who encouraged us to really think about if you're going to be transitioning anyway and broadening your scope and mission, to change our name. So the timing came really well. Then we looked at family shelters because La Posada de Guadalupe is only a men's shelter.
Okay.
So we wanted to focus on families and children. Now, for children especially, because of the trauma impacts of being unsheltered can have lifelong repercussions. So we really wanted to intervene and interrupt that for families and children. And these are a lot of single moms, working poor.
Sure.
And so we approached Operation Hope North County, which is a women and family shelter. And we said, what can we do to help? And we also approached Interfaith Community Services, which is a very large organization. And we said, we know you're very, very large, but we want to help because they're also working in this space. So there's a lot of groups that work in this space. And we said, how can we complement what you're doing?
Yeah.
How can we support? And so with Operation Hope North County, we established a program called the Stability Fund. And what that is was when they have their residents who graduate, who actually leave and are placed in shelter, there can always be that one economic crisis that destabilizes them. Exactly. So we come in right away. So it could be something as, the car broke down and they need a quick $500. Well, to apply for that, it might take 4 to 6 weeks to go through social services, to get those applications, and you need the money now. And if I can't get to work, I'm not going to get paid. And so it's so important. And if you don't have a strong support system, and many of us take for granted, because we have support systems, or maybe we have some savings, or we can pull something out of investments if we have an economic crisis. If you lose a job and you're the only income provider, what do you do? Right? And you still have to make rent. And we know rent is very expensive here.
Very expensive.
Housing is very expensive. So the Stability Fund is exactly that. It's to keep them stable and in housing. Because once you're stable in housing, then you can work on other issues. The second program is called the Back to Work program, and that is with Interfaith Community Services. And what we do, again, very small part, but important part, is we help cover the cost of essential job tools for people. And many of those are residents from the La Posada de Guadalupe Men's Shelter who walk down the street, so literally just down the street from the shelter, who go to the Interfaith Community Services Carlsbad service office, and they're looking for jobs.
Yep.
What can I do? Well, sometimes to have a job, if you're going to be a forklift driver, you need a certification.
Okay,
the state of California requires that, and it's a dangerous job. Well, if you're going to shell out $60 and you don't have $60 to get a permit or a certification, where does that money come from? So I kind of see it from the private sector as seed money, giving people that boost, that ability to get the certification, whether they're going to be working in a kitchen or they're going to be doing a forklift or some other type of job that's going to help them get an income so that they have money and they can at least start building their lives and putting their lives back together. So that's the Back to Work program that we did. And we have some wonderful success stories, and I encourage people to go onto our website and read about the success stories that we have of individuals who we've helped. And then the last program is the Legacy Fund, which is still with La Posada because we were honoring our roots really as being one of the founders of that shelter. And that is really helping with the holiday gift bag drive, which we thank the Chamber for helping us with that. You're one of the drop-off locations in Carlsbad for that. And then the upcoming happy hour in November, you're going to be at the Park Hyatt. And so with the gift bag drive, it is making sure that on Christmas Day, every resident, I'm going to get emotional here, but every resident wakes up and has something from Santa. It has something because they're in the shelter and they're not with their families. And they need to feel loved too.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is why we say the heart of the community. And I would encourage everyone to follow us on social media, go to our website because we have information about the holiday gift bag drive. And that's going out to the shelter and asking people, what do you need? We don't do that enough. And so when we talk to Operation Hope, for example, the Women and Family Shelter, we asked those residents, what do you need at Christmas? Or what do you need in general? Gift cards, Walmart, Target, gas, grocery stores, socks, hair ties for the kids, Legos, dolls, toy cars, wireless headphones. Who doesn't love a wireless headphone? So these are the things that we do, and that's called our Legacy Fund. And we also obviously accept financial donations as well. So those are our three programs: the Stability Fund, the Back to Work program, and the Legacy Fund. And again, we're just a small part in this coalition, this ecosystem, this community that cares so much about everybody, especially people in crisis. And we really are in a crisis situation. So we just do what we can do.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it sounds like you're doing a lot. I know you keep referring to yourself as just a small piece, but it's an important piece. How do you raise funds to help you do all those things that you just mentioned? Because obviously giving out, grants to stabilize people in those situations, that takes having that money or all these things. So how do you guys raise money?
Yeah, that is the most challenging part. And again, looking at the ecosystem, there are thousands of nonprofits in San Diego. I forget the number, but there are so many, from $500 up to multi-million-dollar organizations. And so we're all kind of going after kind of the same pool of money. We don't have big benefactors or philanthropists that are giving us millions of dollars. And so this is probably the most difficult thing for any nonprofit, is to get sustained revenue. Yeah. And so we do a couple things. We're on social media now. We're on the major channels, but digital marketing is important. Going back to our donors who have supported us in the past, because past donors are a good source. Sure. We're doing a 13 Weeks of Giving campaign, so we've asked local businesses to donate prizes. We have Sunset Chocolate last week. So a lot of chamber members have been so generous in giving of their time and their resources. And so we do a raffle drawing at any dollar amount you can donate, and we do a raffle drawing every Monday, and you can win a prize. So those kind of in-kind donations, so that we can generate that. In February, we had a Valentine's Tea event. We had the mayor come out. We had a council member come out. We had city leaders talking about the homelessness crisis, and we were able to raise money that way. But it's not enough. And when we're talking especially about direct cash assistance, that money goes quickly,
it
right?
Does, right.
So we're kind of thinking about different avenues. Grants are probably the best way because there is grant money out there. We don't have a grant writer on staff.
Right.
We have no one that's done development. In fact, all of the volunteers who are on the board do not have nonprofit experience. Many of us come from the private sector. And so it is just a challenge to figure out how to find those resources. So one idea we have looking toward the future is bringing on a grant writer or hiring someone, independent contractor, to help us go after grants.
Right.
This is a new model, this kind of direct cash assistance, and it really is about that prevention piece of being at the forefront and preventing people from tipping into living in their car, for example, because then the car is on the street. So it really requires cash outlay at the front. So I think our biggest struggle right now and challenge is fundraising. And we're hoping that, going into next year, as, the new funding cycles start, we can get in front of not just the Carlsbad City Council, but other local city councils to get some grants, because most grants are reapproved, and then you have at least a certain stream of revenue coming in. Yes.
Oh, well, that's great. And that makes sense. And you mentioned this earlier. You mentioned it kind of tangentially, but on your website, one of your values is that you guys adopt data-driven solutions. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, we have some researchers on our board. It's important to make decisions based on data, especially when you're running an organization, whether it be nonprofit or for-profit. So certainly we all make emotional decisions. That's key. I do believe in this connection of heart, head, and intuition. But when you're looking at policy, which is about what is the guideline, how do we look ahead, especially these very intractable, it seems complex problems, which are not technical problems, they're just adaptive problems. We need to focus on what does the data say and what are best practices out there. So we're not reinventing the wheel, that we're not trying to create something that maybe others have done, not just in the United States, but maybe somewhere around the world. And so really casting that net wide of looking at what do we know has worked. And so one of the programs out of the Chapin Hall Institute, University of Chicago, is to address homelessness amongst youth in New York City. So they have this program we've kind of based our model on. And when you see efficacy, when you see results, when you see people who are at the most crisis, point of crisis in their life, and they are struggling and they're in trauma, how can we create then these policies that we know work and have outcomes that not only that person wants, but the communities are really focused on, which is to get them housed, right? So the data we use are the research. I know the San Diego the regional task force for homelessness is using a lot of data as well, and looking at what are the best practices. In fact, coming up the end of November is the regional task force on homelessness in San Diego is having a conference.
Oh, great.
And they're going to be focusing on solutions. What are the solutions that we have looked at it in San Diego that worked in other cities? Because the crisis is so acute. If we don't look at what other communities are doing, then we're just going to be stuck in this vicious cycle, right?
In the churn.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. You've mentioned that you guys have updated your website, but I don't think we've shared with everybody what your website is. What's the URL for your website?
So it's a long name, rapidresponsehousingsolutions.org, and it's all spelled out, one word, rapidresponsehousingsolutions.org. You can go there. You can follow us on Instagram, also at Rapid Response, but you have to type it all out.
Yeah.
So it's a long word.
Rapid Response
Housing Solutions and Facebook and LinkedIn as well.
Wonderful. And I would assume those would be great places for people to get more information, or if they wanted to donate or, support you guys in any other way, that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, and come out to the happy hour as well on November 16th.
That's right. We'll be at the Park Hyatt and
we have
for the happy hour, and bring a gift card like Lela mentioned, and you get in for free.
That's right. We have a lot of needs. The holidays are right around the corner, and so we're starting to do our collection November 1st through December 15th, and then we'll drop them off at the shelters so that everyone has something to open on Christmas Day.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come down and share about this amazing work, and we really appreciate all that you guys do in the community. And again, I think your little part is a very key, important part. So thank you for that.
Thanks. And thanks for being part of our community as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on our Carlsbad People, Purpose, and Impact podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please hit the follow button on wherever you get your audio. And please tell a friend. We would love to hear your feedback, which you can share at carlsbadpodcast.com. You can leave us a review, ask a question, or leave an audio comment, which we can play on the show in the future. And that's all we have for today. Can't wait to see you next time on Carlsbad People, Purpose, and Impact. And remember, share some kindness today. It's free, creates goodwill, and makes you feel great.